Good evening, everyone. This is April 10th, 2023. This is the Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order with a Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A, Section 20. On March 29, 2023, Governor Healy signed a supplemental 2023 budget bill allowing remote and hybrid meeting options for both public bodies through March 31st, 2025. This meeting is being recorded. Well, welcome everyone. Tonight we have our continuation of approving the remaining warrant articles for town meeting. So I just want to go over the list of the ones that we have, and then we'll proceed, I think, right into Article 6, which is the override budget. But my list shows for tonight, we need to vote on, if possible, Article 6, Article 13, 19 and 20, 23, 24, 26, and 28. Any confirmation on that?
I'm just double checking that list. I think that is correct.
Okay. Okay, so that's what we got in front of us tonight. Let's see, is Jim Hartnett with us tonight?
He is.
He is. Terrific. Great. Thank you. Okay, so where we left off last week was just a quick recap. I'm not sure how many of us need a recap, but we'll do a quick recap. So at last Monday's select board meeting, the select board changed numbers in the warrant article 6, which is the budget appropriation. And we came to Tuesday night's meeting just coming to understand the number changes and what happened. And we're all trying to process all that information. So we talked about it at length, but clearly made no recommendation at this point. So where we left off, so both Jim and I and poor Cindy, we spent the better course of the week really doing everything we can to model different scenarios with the budget appropriation and to see how we could make numbers work in the best way we can. So, you know, as you know, as we all talked about for a while, the contemplation of discussion had been a $3 million override and filtering it in $1 million a year each year for the 3 years into the levy was the plan that had been discussed for a while. And the purpose of the override was to kind of get our heads above water and not enter into increasing government per se, but really reestablishing the positions that were needed. So that's where we had been. At last week's meeting, the school committee had requested some additional numbers, and as I mentioned, the select board did change the warrant article. So we went back to try. So Jim and I have spent a long time trying to model, how do we make this $3 million work? Do we, bring it in all at once? Do we stagger it? How do we address the school's needs? How do we address the town's needs? How do we contemplate for, next year? In our fiscal 24 budget, the school has a significant deficit that's being funded by free cash. So we know the override needs to fill that gap. So a $3 million override, in essence, is $2.5 million of new expenses that the town can incur, already incurred $500,000 that now that has to go in. So we went through a number of scenarios as best we could, and we both really came back to the same conclusion that the original proposal that had been on the table, the $1 million in the first year, and funding it accordingly, the 54% to the school, which is $405,000, and then 45% to the town, which is $345,000, and then putting $250,000 into the stabilization fund seemed to be the best scenario that we came through. So Jim or Dick, do you want to add to that where we've been? Poor Jim, I would send him spreadsheets almost every hour. Look at this model. Let's look at this one. And then I would send it to Cindy too. And so we kind of came back to the same place 20 hours later.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think, yeah, you're right. I think we've looked at every possible option there is. Karen's gone through 15, 20, 30 models over the last week or so. I think what we've come to realize is that if we increase the schools to where we had proposed last week, $3 million just does not work. It puts us in a more difficult position a year or two down the line than we are in now. So going back to the original distribution between the school and the town is probably the only way we can make this work.
Thank you,
The
Jim.
select board has pretty much come to that same conclusion after doing it again and taking our time and realizing that $3 million doesn't go. Maybe we were thinking 5, what we're talking about 3. But anyway, it caught us at the last moment there, so we should have taken more time to review it. But now we reviewed it completely, and yeah, the only one that works is $3 million in the fashion that you outlined.
Thank you for that. Buzzy, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, just a couple of questions for clarification. So what's being proposed now, to what extent does it differ from where the select board is now with respect to the proposed override budget in the first year? And also I'd be interested in what has changed to the extent that there has been a change in what the select board is now proposing.
So go ahead, Dick, you want to?
Go ahead.
So the proposal that came up last week came up very quick. It was after discussion in the meeting with the school department, and we were actually looking at $3 to $5 million for the override. If we want to do a $3 million override, we need to go back to the original proposal, or we should go back to the original proposal. The numbers work much better. The proposal we looked at last week does work if you want to go with a $5 million override. We can force it into the $3 million, but within a year or two, we're going to be in a more difficult position than we are now. So unless we go with the $5 million override, should really consider the original proposals that we looked at starting 2 months ago.
And can I just ask one more follow-up question? To what extent are the schools aware of the change? Have they participated in that rethinking at all?
To this point, I mean, we're working on this afternoon. We have not got back to them with these changes. The board of
I would add that the current year, they're fine in the current fiscal year. So with the additional funding, if 2.5 passes, if the override passes, they would have fulfilled their entire request for the current year. It's really the subsequent years, which we don't have to deal with right now today. But for the current year, they should be fine. They were only short about $230,000 or $260,000 from their existing budget request. So if the override passes, they get that plus a little bit more. It's the ensuing years that become a little bit more of a balancing act for everyone.
That's very helpful. I hadn't understood that. And in Article 6, we're not asking for a vote in the second and third years, right? Just in the first year.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Yeah, that's an extremely important point, Cindy, as you mentioned. So the supplemental budget appropriation here would definitely fill the remaining gap and give a little extra, not a tremendous amount, but a little bit more. So yes. Hugh, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm relieved to hear that we're focusing on the 3, because I thought the 5 or such was going to be dead on arrival. So that without the masterful massaging of numbers you've done and so forth, I don't think it would have worked. So I'm glad to hear it's not on the table.
Thank you, Hugh. Anybody else have any? Oh, go ahead, Dick.
I should add, just for the record, that the select board had voted differently than what we're talking about tonight, as you know. And we're going to meet on Wednesday. It'll just be a brief remote meeting to basically vote on the warrant article number 6, basically following what the finance committee has recommended. And to an earlier question, and I assume that will go as we expect, but I can't speak for the whole select board. Others may have different opinions. I know there's the select board tends to want to help out the schools and see their way clear, but this time we just don't have the money, and that's acknowledged. But I just throw that out as a caveat, but I think we will just verify this. And, but of course, open meeting law doesn't allow us to have deliberation ahead of time with more than 2 people. So I just point that out to you, but we'd be following the FinCom. And it's kind of like what I said at the end of the last Monday night's meeting or Tuesday nights with the FinCom, that we weighed in rightly or wrongly on our numbers. School had weighed in, but in the end, the FinCon is full sway on this matter, although the select board has to actually put forth the article and print it and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to mention that to you. I don't think there's any issue there.
Great. Thank you, Dick. Part of the modeling done was, although the appropriation in Article 6 is just for the fiscal 24 year, we did part of the modeling is be thinking about what's happening in fiscal 25, 26, 27, 28. So if you ramp up expenses in 24, then that's going to carry all the way through. So again, we've got $2.5 million to deal with, right? The 3 million minus the $500,000 that covers the deficit. So you've got $2.5 million between the school and the town. If you ramp up spending too early, you've spent it all and you can't recover. And so you've got to be very careful to not ramp up early until you figure out where your fiscal 25, 26, 27, potentially 28 are going to look like. So we don't want to ramp up and then use up all of these funds in 2 years and then be back in the same place in 2 years where we've got an additional $3 million and then consumed it. And then now we're beyond our means again. So we want to avoid that at all costs. So we need to be really careful before we start to accelerate spending. So back to our original, I think makes the most sense. Does anyone else have any comments? Quiet crowd.
So I'm willing to make a motion that we put forth as our budget. I'm not seeing it on the screen, but I saw it earlier when you sent it out. The original budget we had, if an override passes, under Article 6.
I will second Buzzy's motion.
Thank you. And just to clarify, so that would be 405,000 for the school appropriation, 345,000 for this town, and 250 for the stabilization. So total 1 million, right? That's what we're talking about.
If you say so, I'm not recalling exactly the numbers that I read earlier today.
Yep, that's okay. Jim, just let's make sure we got it clarified, right? That's the numbers, right? Okay. So we have a, oh, before we go, Richard Brewer's raised his hand. I'll let you go before.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention regarding the schools though, they don't know of this change that I don't believe, so. I would ask, I think it's the role of the finance committee to make that known, pass that on. It may not be well received, but somebody's gonna do it. And, we'd be glad to talk to them separately if necessary.
Sure thing. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor, so I'll proceed along to a vote for the finance committee. Buzzy?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Gary, are you here?
Yes.
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 Yes, 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 yes. Yes and yes. Cindy?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Karen, aye. Hallelujah.
Fantastic. We got 2 sticks anyway.
Hallelujah. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, I don't know if anybody else has any, I know there's a few other people on the call, but I don't know if anyone else has any comments. We're gonna move on to the more boring warrant articles. So if anybody has any questions or comments or wants to say anything, you're welcome to stay to the whole meeting, but we're gonna move on to the boring stuff.
Okay,
Not boring, but
Night, folks. Be
not
well.
as exciting. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate
Remember
it.
tomorrow, Diamond,
Yes, vote yes. Vote
among
yes,
other
yes.
things
Diamond.
too. Good night.
Don't forget to vote.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate your support. Thank you. All right, Mr. Al Lees.
I just want to say one quick thing. This group has done the impossible, which is to make Elise speechless. So congratulations, and let's hope that we can move this forward so that we can get some fiscal breathing room for our town and move forward. So with that, congratulations to all.
I want to say this is a high point for Elise, for him to be able to say he's been left speechless. He's just contradicted himself.
Whew.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks for that, Al. Let's see. Did someone have something in the chat? Oh no, Jim said he stepped away. Okay.
Okay.
No other chat. So, okay. Okay. So we can, feel like the highlight of my evening is over. Let's see.
The next article is Article 13. We had a question last week because of the scope of Article 13. Just as a reminder, this is for the $100,000 for the old high school. The question was regarding the inclusion of not only the maintenance and upkeep of the school, but this amount of money could be used towards the sale or reuse of the building. And the question was, why did it have to be included that way? I was advised by Jim that last year the town meeting approved the same wording for $200,000. The wording allowed for the carryover of funding into this fiscal year. Because there was a fund balance from last year, the request was reduced to $100,000 this year. There are a number of different ideas being floated for the old school, and this wording gives the town some flexibility as to how the funds could be spent and may allow the town to address unanticipated expenses.
I would move to approve.
Okay. Second,
I'll second it.
Karen, you're on mute.
Town has a surety and it's.
Thank you. Does anyone, before we go to a vote, does anyone have any other questions or all set? Okay, I'll move to a roll call vote. Buzzy,
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
Gary,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Karen, I thank you. So that's Article 13. So our next one, I believe, is 19. Is that correct that we're going on?
Yep, 19, addresses it's a question about why those three particular accounts were listed there. All three of those accounts have requested to increase their revolving account spending limits. The fire department increase, last year was 160, it's going to 180 this year. The Board of Health increased from 10,000 to 20,000, and the library increased from $3,000 to $5,000. All of these monies come out of their respective revolving accounts of receipts that those departments collect.
I'll move the recommendation of the yes vote on the article.
I'll second that.
Great. Any other further discussion? No questions? Okay, I'll move to a roll call. Buzzy?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes,
Lawrence?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Karen, I thank you. That's number 19. So the next article is 20.
I don't have anything for 20. Did we not pass 20?
I think 23 is next.
23 is the next one.
Oh, I had 20 highlighted for some reason. So
Oh,
let me,
I think we voted on that one.
did we already vote on that one? So can I just check my list? Do you have the?
Sure. Let me get my list out.
Yeah.
What is 20? What's the wording on 20?
It's the revolving funds.
That was 19. That was the actual revolving accounts in 20, right?
Yes, so that's just repetitive from last year. That's what was approved last year. We approved those yearly.
Okay. I just want to make sure we did vote on that the last time. Because for some reason I had it highlighted that we hadn't voted on it. So I just want to,
What's the harm in double voting?
yeah, that's a good idea, Buzzy. That'll be quicker.
Yeah.
That's much quicker. Good idea.
So moved.
Second.
Brilliant. Roll call. Buzzy,
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
Gary,
Yes.
Cindy,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
and Karen, I thank you. All right, so 23 is our next one, right?
Right.
Okay.
The question that I had posed is, if passed, what is the next step regarding Article 23? This is the so-called municipal light plant, and is the acquisition limited to telecommunications? The town administrator has not been directly involved. I did send out to the committee, there was a link in my response, and then I sent that also a link out to the webpage, I believe Saturday or Sunday or whenever, when I came across it, regarding that. And it was kind of a two-part question because it ties into Article 23 and 24 regarding the approval to authorize the select board to issue revenue bonds. So I can't say that I've come with a tremendous more amount of information. So I don't have much more to add. If you've been to the different websites, you may have been able to form some additional opinion about it, but I don't have much more to add. Jim has said that he has not been involved in this. So number 23, everything that I've been told anyway, this does not involve any direct town payments. There would be payments by users, but not, this does not put the town on the hook for anything financial anyway. That's what I've been told, but I have not seen anything in print regarding that.
Okay, so Buzzy, you have your hand up, and then Hugh, you're
Yeah,
next.
I'm a little concerned about this. I'm less concerned about getting the legislature to authorize moving on with this than I am about setting up the whatever the institution is. It's not unprecedented for the Finance Committee to reserve a vote at town meeting after some investigation's been done. I think Cindy did a great job of connecting us up with the source of information, but it is, after all, only the vote yes on these two articles, information from proponents that we've read. I'd feel a little better, and I'd be willing to volunteer if nobody else would, to investigate this a little bit further, vote at some point before town meeting, even if it's that evening before town meeting, and then announce our vote at that time.
Just a quick question on that concept. So I know Steve Forrs prefers that the Finance Committee has all its recommendations in the printed warrant, so we would not be able to do that. Would you suggest that we vote to make no recommendation and then change it at the town meeting? I'm not sure how that would work, because that's,
Well, I'm not sure, maybe Hugh remembers what the language has been that we used in the past.
Right, we've done it too.
Pardon me?
I said, you're right, we've reserved it until town meeting. And
Yeah,
it's what you say, that we don't have either for or against, we are taking it under advisement, as it were. I'm with Buzzy on this, I must say, and I don't mean to cut him off, but when he's through, I have a few things to say.
well, I think, thank you, but I just see David Cole here, and I think David's been part of the committee, so he might be able to shed some information to us. David, do you want to join in to the call?
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, what is the question?
Well, the question is really what does Article 23 do? And is it limited to the acquisition? Is it limited for just use for telecommunications, or is this a very broad question regarding a so-called municipal light plant? We understand that it's meant for telecommunication, but this wording is rather broad, so I'm not sure that, you've had anything to do with the wording of the article. But then in 24, I certainly understand the concept of revenue bonds, but if you have a startup operation without any track record, would the town have to also pledge some additional full faith and credit or moral obligation to fund those revenue bonds?
That was what I was gonna ask.
Right.
But if the selectmen are issuing revenue bonds, that implies the selectmen have some responsibilities, involvement, whatever. I saw the reference that said no town money involved.
Right.
I'm a little cautious because it may be no town money involved up front, but it could be that there's a guarantee behind bonds that are being issued by another entity. So if things go down the pike, maybe the town, I don't know. I'm not,
Right. And that's what we're trying to figure out, right?
It's still murky.
Okay, all right, I'll try to respond to that. This is something that is being done in many other towns across the state. Fairhaven has led the way in this area, and New Bedford and Dartmouth are moving in the same direction. And we're all working together through a broadband coalition that has been organized by the chair of the select board in Fairhaven. And so it's not just a unique thing, but it is focused on trying to bring high-speed internet to the whole town. And the way in which that can be done is through setting up a municipal light plant, which was a provision in the state law from many years ago when communities didn't have their own electricity, and they did that, but now it's been morphed into something that deals primarily with internet systems. And the purpose is to try to get an internet system in the town that would be accessible to everybody, not required for anybody, but accessible, and it would eventually serve all parts of the town, and it would provide high-speed, competitive internet that gives people various choices as to how they want to get their internet and how they want to pay for it. And it's already available in some parts of the town offices and the schools and the library and the Council on Aging and the Harbor Master and elsewhere. But we're wanting to set up an entity that would not be a town enterprise, but a separate entity called the Municipal Light Plant that would be responsible for the installation and management of this, but it would probably be contracting with various groups to carry out various aspects of that, as we've already been contracting with some groups to install the parts that are there now. The financing would come through revenue bonds, but it would come to the Municipal Light Plant, a separate entity, not to the town, and it would be an obligation of that. And so it's nobody's compelled to sign on, and the town won't be, as I understand it, we can write the regulations in ways that the town won't be obligated for any of the liabilities of this entity.
The closest analogy I would get is cable, where a franchise is issued to a private entity, which then supplies the services. There's no connection with the town other than giving permission. And I don't doubt what you're saying, except I worry a little bit when I see the selectmen are issuing revenue bonds.
The selectmen would not be issuing.
But that's what it said, I think.
Pardon me?
I think that's part of the article, which is.
Oh, no, it
raised
would
my
not
question.
be. And we've got more detailed legislation, and the details of the legislation, which I can share with you. But Taunton has a municipal light plant that does this, and it's separate from the town and government. And Fairhaven is doing this. There are about 16 other towns that have already done it. And so we're just following a pretty well-established pattern. And I can certainly check back and provide you more information on that. But I think the assurance we've been given
I don't.
that the
You're
town,
what you're saying.
the assurance we've been given is that the town will not have to bear the obligations.
Assurances by promoters don't resonate very high with me. But, and the fact that the selectmen endorsing revenue bonds is in the warrant article raises my question. It may well be wrong. My view my question may be wrong, but I would like to be sure and not just reviewing the fact that the other boys are doing it.
Okay, I'll be happy to check that out and get back to you.
Okay.
I've been given assurances that that would not be the case. And so if there's wording in there now that implies that or directly says it, why it shouldn't be there.
Fine, thank you. It doesn't imply so much as there may be a very good answer. I just don't have it. If the selectmen are issuing revenue bonds, that implies that the town, which the selectmen are representing, is part of the operation. It may be there's some saving language that says it's appearing ministerial, so forth, and so on. But you just want to be sure, because once I see selectmen signing something and a revenue bond presumably has financial implications, I wonder about the details. That's all.
Well, we don't want that either. And so I will
I'm sure.
try
But
to,
if people want something passed, sometimes gloss over the details. On the theory, it never will be a problem. We don't need to worry about it.
yeah,
But
well,
sure.
I'll try to provide you with information that makes clear that that would not be the case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. So Lawrence, you have your hand up. Go ahead. and you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I was on mute.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the risk of flogging a tired horse here. The wording of Article 24 does specifically state to see if the town will vote to petition the general court for the passage of special enabling legislation authorizing the town to authorize, issue, and sell revenue bonds to finance the development of telecommunications facilities, fund any necessary reserves, pledge revenues from the operation of telecom facilities, and so on and so forth. So I think that makes it pretty clear that there's more clarification required, because that wording does tend to imply that the town is going to be on the hook. So we need to resolve that for sure.
We had taken the wording directly from the Fairhaven model, and it was reviewed by town council and they accepted it. And so, but I'll go back and check it out.
Yeah, and I understand sometimes the wordings of these things is confusing and has to be certain ways because of legislative or regulatory requirements. So I think we just need to understand exactly what that wording implies and means, and what the ramifications of it will be. Just, to put everyone's minds at rest about that.
Yeah, well, mine too. So I'm totally opposed to having anything that obligates the town to bear responsibility for this operation,
Yep.
for the funding of the operation. I hope they'll bear responsibility for seeing that it operates well.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I mean, it sounds, I have to say, just, personal, it sounds like a great idea. But let's make sure that it is.
I visited the library today. The library and the Council on Aging are already hooked up to the system. And the library director reports that on one hand, his operations on this fiber system have exploded in terms of speed and reliability. But he also said that the students from the middle senior high school have discovered that they can now come over to the library and use their cell phones and tie into a Wi-Fi system thereby that is much more reliable and don't get interrupted and so forth. So already the smart young teenagers have learned how to capitalize on the system, which is a great thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that, there's been a lot of disgruntled folks in town for a very long time about the state of internet and broadband services and the monopoly that Spectrum has on those. So yeah, we just got to make sure that it's going to do everything that we hope it will do, right?
Well, we're completely in agreement on that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Just saying that this is a statute that's being wrestled into submission. You attended in the 30s to produce electric light plants, being repurposed for something remotely connected since there's electricity involved. So it's not surprising the pieces don't really fit very well. We just want to make sure that there is legislation which we don't know about to be drafted and submitted. The devil is in the details, as we know. We all have the same goal. So that I'm all in favor of the idea. It's just the details of whether the town would be on the hook.
I agree with you completely.
And we all agree. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Gary, you had your hand up. You're up.
Yeah. I just said, right from the beginning when this whole idea came about, it's very hard to grasp the concept of this. Not necessarily of, maybe regional internet access, but how this whole thing is going to work. Because you've got a lot of big players in this game. You've got Comcast, you've got Spectrum, you've got all these different companies that are, let's say we're going to cut the price and we're going to offer it for, I don't know, $29.99 a month. You better believe that Spectrum is not going to want to lose that client base. So they'll offer it for $19.99 a month. So, and who's going to maintain this infrastructure? Is it going to be the highway department? that has 5 people that's currently strapped as it is. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And, I know we just keep on throwing money at this, but in the end, is this going to be really worth it? Is it going to be really worth the effort of putting all this time and energy in something that may not even happen? You was absolutely right. The last time a electric conglomerate was adopted in Massachusetts was 1936. So you're right. They're repurposing an old or a law that's on the books and trying to revive this to fit into what is now broadband and all this other technology that's out there. I asked this question last year and I never got an straight answer from it. What community is this actually working in? There's been multiple communities, not just in this area, Quincy, you name them. I've done the research. I don't know of any community where it's actually happening. I mean, where they're actually having, discounted internet or discounted Wi-Fi. I mean, yeah, the next game is streaming. That's why these cable companies are losing money, is because everybody's going to streaming now. So yeah, I get it. They want more of that piece of the pie. But I have yet to see a community or have heard of a community where this has actually worked. So I don't know if somebody has that answer.
Well, have you looked at Taunton? There's a Taunton municipal light plant that has been in operation for some time. Concord is another town that has done it. There are, I think, 16 towns across the state that have already implemented this, following this model.
No, those are municipal light plants. They're producing electricity.
No, they are providing the high-speed fiber internet system.
Well, I guess my question, we're all saying the same thing to a extent, but I'm
I never heard of it.
Point a little further, which is, what is the corporate structure? We're all talking about what would be done, et cetera, but never knowing who's going to do what. Gary's points about maintenance, organization, management, so forth, right on the money. We've never had a presentation from anyone as to how this is going to be. We had a warrant article last year at this time that came out of nowhere and was sold on the basis of, don't worry, this is just an initial vote. That's okay. And I say, I'm not against the idea. And I guess I'm repeating what I've been saying right along, but this is not just the financing, is what are we buying? A pig and a poke.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in I don't want to be in the cable business now. I mean, we're having a hard time generating, what we need to do in town and figure this out. So being in the cable business is, to me, we provide basic services. I don't believe town should be in the cable service, shouldn't be in the restaurant business, should be running airports, golf courses. That is not what.
But also, we're not, but we need to know.
Right.
There's a separate entity. I mean, my best analogy comes back to a cable franchise. The town authorizes an entity to provide these services. That's fine. That's clear cut. That is non town, no liability, etc. This is why it's being crammed in under the old statute. I have no idea. Maybe it's a tax issue. Maybe it comes under the umbrella of the town and therefore is tax exempt. Whereas if it were private, it would not be. The structures exist, and I know that David has volunteered to dig into it. There must be the documents in Fairhaven or wherever the places we talked about. They've got it. They must have the corporate structure and everything else that we can look at. But I guess I'm repeating myself, but I think it's important.
Yeah, if we did a regional approach, that'd be better, in my opinion.
Can I suggest two things? One, the Internet Advisory Committee is on the town website. And if you go and look at the Internet Advisory Committee, it has two links to, one to the master plan, which that advisory committee has been working on for the past year. And it's about a 20 or 30 page document that spells out many different aspects of it. And there also is a link to a website that the advisory committee has created to inform people about the various options relating to this. So if you go to that website and look it up, it will, I hope, answer a lot of your questions. but I will specifically try to explore the ones that have been raised tonight.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Before- Thank you.
Website, and it basically is a presentation of the good things. So I don't mean to be nasty about it, but town council reviewed something. We don't know what he was asked to review. And the issue, it's fine to look at it from the standpoint of what benefits it would provide for people in the field. But an investor or legally oriented review, which is really what you're suggesting, David, and that is fine. That's what I want to say. What is the documentation that lays out the rights and liabilities of the players, including the town? And that's not there. It may be in the document
Great.
that have
So,
been filed.
That's what we're hoping to get authorization to move ahead on to do
If
explicitly.
we're, at this point, we're authorizing.
all right, I want to just interject here, if I may. So it doesn't appear we have enough information tonight that we're going to be able to make a decision. So we can continue this conversation without information for another hour. I'm going to
Given you sources of information, you'll look at them.
So I know Buzzy's got his hand up, and then Cindy does too, but I'd like us to think about calling this at some point. We're not going to be able to make a decision tonight. Obviously, we don't have enough information. So, but I'll Buzzy, I'll let you go next, and then Cindy, you next.
Well, I was going to make a motion, unless we want to meet again on Wednesday night. I think that we should vote not to make a recommendation prior to town meeting, and reserve the opportunity to vote on a recommendation at some point between now and then.
Right. We also do, like you said, we have a scheduled meeting on Wednesday. So we can, if in the next 48 hours, we can get somebody to help us answer the questions that we have, we can have our meeting Wednesday night with a presentation as appropriate, and then we could potentially vote Wednesday night. So this way, everything's in the warrant.
I would agree with Buzzy, but it would not be the first time when we said that we would recommend a town meeting. And he may not like it, but it's perfectly feasible to do. We are lacking information. I don't think why we should have to force it down before having full information to do it. The people who are promoting this presumably are aware of these questions and can give us the answers before the town meeting itself.
Right. What I'm saying, we may be able to get that by this.
But that's 2 days from now. I'd rather have time to absorb it and think about it rather than, and therefore town meeting, I think is better.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Excuse me. I just wanted to bring up 2 points that David had mentioned. You mentioned the city of Taunton and the town of Concord. In both of those cases, they also operate municipal electric plants. So their infrastructure was already in place as far as the hierarchy is concerned, and they added the broadband onto their already municipal light operations. So both of them already had the existing infrastructure. Ours would be a total startup. So it's a little bit different from Taunton or Concord as far as establishing the department and establishing a revenue stream and establishing where the initial startup costs are going to come from. Someone's going to have to come out of pocket to get some of the startup costs to associated with that. So anyway, I agree with Karen. We should move on. We don't have the answers, and we can move on.
So Buzzy, you made a motion. Did you make a
Yes, the motion was, people can propose the exact language if they remember what we used in the past, but just that we
Item list.
sorry.
So annually, as we prepare the town warrant, I come before the board to just go over the list of what we're proposing or expecting to
Gary,
be
you're not on mute.
warrant articles. I don't have.
I just muted him.
And that'd be for both.
Motion would be to reserve our recommendation until town meeting.
And that's for 23 and 24.
That would be
23 and
23.
24, yes.
And I would second that motion.
I'm in the other further discussion, which I might have some. Um, Steve Forrest has been very adamant with us that he wants the finance committee's recommendation printed in the town warrant. So I just want to reiterate that that's
Right.
the
We can have that
expectation.
put into the town warrant. And Steve does not control the finance committee.
Did he
Okay.
say why? Did he give a reason why it's so important?
Because the warrant is going to be printed and distributed. And so residents are reviewing the warrant to help make decisions, and understanding the finance committee's recommendation or not is part of the whole process. And so to not have that is just a missing piece.
The
So,
finance committee is entitled to make presentations at town meeting. The fact that we're reserving the right to do so doesn't really change anything. If we said we recommend, we can say recommend favor or against. We should then explain it, since this is an important matter, whatever that conclusion was now, when we have all the facts.
I can see where it's an important consideration what Steve is raising. But I think an even more important consideration is that we not vote for something unless we're convinced we're protecting the town appropriately.
I agree 100%. So I don't believe at all we should be making a recommendation for or not if we don't have the information. So support that immensely. I would only ask that we try to get information, and we may have it by Wednesday, and that would be my suggestion, that we try to be able to be responsive to that and get it in. This way we could change our recommendation and get it printed in the warrant. So that's what I would ask.
What is it that we are going to do? We're going to ask David to report back to us. Are we going to ask anybody else to do anything?
Well,
Sure?
yeah, I mean, I know Shauna has been very involved in this committee, so Shauna might be able to provide the information that's needed, and whether that is Shauna to come to our meeting to talk about it, or Buzzy, you volunteered to do some research. You might want to talk to Shauna, and she may then, through her, you may be able to come to us and provide enough information for us.
I'd be willing to do that with respect to asking about, technical sorts of things. I must say, I'm not Hugh when it comes to revenue bonds and,
I can
financial.
help you with the revenue bonds. I mean, that I used to invest in revenue, but municipal
Okay.
revenue bonds. So I certainly understand what the requirements are and what the prerequisites are for an investor that would be purchasing revenue bonds.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you and I, Cindy, can talk offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, we can talk to David and talk to Shauna. I'm a little tied up tomorrow morning, but I'm available tomorrow afternoon.
I am
and-
too. I am as well.
Okay.
So my only question is, and I know we're still on the waiting for a roll call. So my question is, if not between now and Wednesday, then between now and town meeting. So who will be the person that will get the answers that we need, so that when we get to town meeting, we will be able to vote appropriately? So who would be volunteering to do that?
Well,
Buzzy and I will.
Okay.
And he can
Okay.
distribute. My concern is that we get perfectly well-intended commentary without any documentation behind it. I think we need to see instruments. Or there is work about a private legislation. Is there a draft piece of legislation? We should see that, or someone should see it. Is there a form of corporate structure or something similar? Well, we should see it, or someone should see it. Buzzy is perfectly competent to see all this, certainly. But I don't think we want to have assurances that everything's in order. It's well intended, but it doesn't really tell us anything.
Right.
So Hugh, are you going to volunteer for that piece to get those answers?
I can't do that tomorrow because I have to do things with accountants and such. But I will certainly listen.
Buzzy and I will find out what we can tomorrow.
Okay.
Report back.
I don't mean to be beating the horse, but the documents, to me, if Fairhaven is doing it, there must be a set of documents that they're operating under.
That's a great
The
idea. Yeah.
legislation that's being proposed there must be a draft, or if there isn't, that raises a good concern, because now you really do have a pig in a poke that somebody's going to draft something with an authorization already in hand to file it that we know nothing about.
Great. And Lawrence, thank you. So Lawrence, you had your hand up and down. Did you mean it up or down or down or
Well,
up?
it's kind of, yeah, I mean, there's been so much discussion already. I was just going to say, the legislation as far as the state legislation about the municipal light plants and internet services, that is out there. That is on mass.gov. I think Hugh has a very good point, though, about seeing an actual example of the corporate structure that other towns have used in this particular regard. That would be very helpful and useful. Also, I've been chatting with Shauna offline here as we've been talking, and I have also volunteered to join the Internet Advisory Committee as well. So I think between all of us, we should be able to wrestle this thing down to the ground and get the kind of more detailed information that we're looking for, either by Wednesday or certainly by time for town meeting. And I wouldn't have a problem if, as a committee, we said we make no recommendation on this particular warrant or these particular articles in the warrant. But I would definitely think that we should be as fully informed as we possibly can prior to town meeting, for sure.
What was the motion that we have on right now?
The motion is that we reserve until town meeting our recommendation. It seems to me if there's some chance we will not meet on Wednesday, we should pass that motion. We can always reconsider it on Wednesday if we decide we have enough information to instead actually recommend or not recommend.
I lowered my hand.
I vote, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so I just want to make sure. So the vote right now is to make, no, wait, sorry. What is the vote that we're voting on? I'm so confused.
Reserve recommendation.
To reserve recommendation. What's the difference than just making no recommendation?
That implies negativity. I think reserving implies we're thinking about it.
Okay. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Cindy, did you want to say something?
Well, just that we have other articles that we have no recommendation, and that's because we've contemplated it and felt that there was no financial impact.
Right.
That's not true in this case. We don't know what the impact is. So I think it's withholding a recommendation is a little bit different than no recommendation.
I
Agreed.
would agree with that.
Okay. All right. If nothing else, I'll do a roll call now. I think we've exhausted that conversation, right? I see no other hands, so I will go roll call on that. Buzzy?
Let me think about it, but no. I vote aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Karen, aye. Okay, thank you everyone on that. So we have Article 26 is the next one to vote on. And that
Oh
is,
yeah, wait a minute. I gotta
Nope,
put my
you
foot
got
back
it,
on.
right.
Yeah, I got it. So this is also talking about scope of a feasibility study. I don't think Jim is still with us. So the question was, what is the intended scope for the feasibility study? Because we felt that this is regarding a $200,000 feasibility study for the all town buildings, town-owned property, not just the high school. The reply that was received back is that the scope has not been finalized. It is broad enough to include other municipal buildings. At a minimum, Jim would want to evaluate the annex, the town hall, and the council on aging buildings, compare costs of rehabbing existing buildings to cost of rehabbing and moving into the old high school, evaluate the cost of moving into the old high school as compared to tearing the school down and the cost of building a new municipal complex. So it's a fairly broad-based feasibility study. They have not outlined what the RFP would include, but that's certainly the idea. I think once they had the funding for it, then they could nail it down a little bit. But it is supposed to be fairly broad-based, and it is just for a feasibility study.
Hugh, go ahead.
I think it's premature. I think you can spend a lot of money evaluating theoretical uses of the different buildings when you have no idea of what you're going to do. And the whole core there is going around the old high school. I think that the buildings, the annex is an old building. It may or may not be worth saving, et cetera. We're going to have a project to put a lot of money into the town hall. The library, everybody seems pretty happy with. I don't quite see spending the money to evaluate everything in the abstract when the element of the room is the high school.
Thank you. I might think a little the opposite on that. I think the town has been stuck in not knowing how to proceed. There's information, but there's not the appropriate amount of information. Right. There's not a plan, and we'll continue to be stuck in this never-ending. We can't make a decision because we have no information to make the decision. So no decision is making a decision. I think the town needs to spend some money so that it can figure out a direction and move in a direction. So I think this is an important thing to proceed.
Lawrence has his hand up.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Lawrence, go ahead. I try not to jump in. I try to let all the questions first. I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, I would agree with you, Karen. I don't think it's premature at all, Hugh. I'm afraid we've spent at least we spent about 120,000 last year. We're going to spend about the same amount this year, just keeping the old high school ticking over as it is. I mean, that's the cost of this feasibility study right there. And I know from the meetings that I've attended with regards to the high school repurposing that, until there is some sort of consolidated view on the state of and potential future of all of the town administration buildings, then we won't be able to come up with a reasonable idea of a reasonable plan of what to do with the old high school building. I think Karen hit the nail on the head. You know, we're stuck with this elephant in the room, and there's been a lot of there's been a fair amount of discussion and ideas thrown around, but they're nothing more really than hot air at this point until we have scoped out the full extent of the situation and identified reasonable paths forward. We won't be able to actually make a decision that will be in the best interest of the town and make the best use of the properties that we have. So I think this would be not only a wise use of money, I think it would also be the smart way to move ahead with this. And I think it will get us unstuck from the current situation that we're in.
The only figure I have heard, which was an off an envelope, not even figure for repurposing, as the phrase goes, the high school, somewhere from 25 to 30 million. That's insanity. The idea that then we're going to justify that by finding out that the other town buildings need work, etc., nowhere near those kinds of figures. The only logical thing to do with the high school is to get rid of it. And that doesn't require an evaluation of the other buildings around town. I figure at some point, when the high school has been dealt with, then an evaluation of buildings is fine. Now it's, I think, an attempt to justify doing something which I think would be insane. Simple as that. So I'm not in favor.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know where that 25 million figure came from, but that
I don't
you know,
guarantee it.
again, as you said, that was, you know, that was somebody's back of an envelope calculation based on God knows what and for what purpose.
I agree.
And I've also heard figures that even to get rid of the high school would cost in the neighborhood of 10 million. So, you know, we have this albatross around our necks, and the only way to get rid of it is to figure out a reasonable plan forward.
Yeah.
mhm.
Couldn't get right. I disagree. I agree with you that the figures are anybody's guess, but I don't see. I think the 10 million is, well, they're all crazy, but getting rid of it does not include a cost. It stops the cost.
Well, you know,
You get that horse, I suspect.
yeah, I think it's the same thing with a plan, right? So if you proceed as you said, Hugh, and you get rid of this old high school, and then you go to evaluate the other buildings and find out that they're inadequate or insufficient, or you need more space, you've already got rid of a potential opportunity that you could have used for those purposes. So if you spend the time and come up with a plan and get all your information before you make any decisions, then that's what I think this is an attempt to do.
Okay, I disagree.
Thank you. Gary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so how much have we paid so far to be in that school after the new school is closed? What has it been, 200,000 a year?
Yeah, no, it's about, it runs about 150 a year. The school last year paid, and the year before, I believe, paid the first 50 of utility and custodial costs. And the town, so its insurance is the big, is a big factor, and heating is a big factor.
So we've paid, let's say, 400.
About 350 all total.
So we've paid 350 on a school that's, I don't know, how old is it? I mean, it's the school is
1950, I believe, the
Right.
original.
1947.
Yeah.
right. So in a building that needed to be vacated, like yesterday, we still occupy. And I'm with you. I mean, I just can't see us keep spending more and more money on a building that, let's say we get 10 million for the property. I mean, it's $10 million we don't have now.
There's no way we're going to get 10 million.
No,
And
the
even
10
if you
million,
did,
the 10 million would be to demolish it, Gary. That we wouldn't get anywhere near 10 million for it, because whoever buys that plot of land is going to have to demolish the building. So you're already in negative equity.
right.
I mean,
And
why
then you've
can't
got
we?
to, find a home for the
Why couldn't
school.
we do why couldn't we do a mixed use there where we put up 60 residential homes? We need housing, and
There's only 16 acres. There's only 16 acres.
I mean,
Right.
whatever the number is, let's say we put up 20 homes and we build like a village setting where, there may not be as much drain on resources for fire and police. I just think that we're missing out every year that goes by on potential revenue on that site. And we're actually paying money to be there. I mean, that's what we're doing. And we're paying, we're leasing it from ourselves. That's what.
But that's
crazy
exactly what this feasibility study would help
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
be
So-
able to
Yeah.
determine
Because
that the highest and best use would be to sell the land and let somebody build houses on it. Fine. Right now, we have a lot of sentimental people, a lot of business people that may or may not have their own agendas for it. We need a third party to come in and say, your town hall has an expected life of X, Y, or Z. It's going to cost you X number of dollars to start bringing it up to code. I mean, you talk about the high school in 1947. Well, town hall, dates that as well. I mean, so there are some significant improvements that have to be made in some of
Yeah.
these other buildings, including the highway department. So
Yeah.
we need an evaluation of all of these so that we can have a plan going forward saying, we've got, $10-12 million of upgrades that we have to, should we sell the school, recover that money and put it into these buildings? Maybe we should consolidate. Maybe the land where the Council on Aging is the most valuable land there is. And maybe we should consider selling that and put that into another bill. We don't know that because we're all, volunteer people just like everybody else, and we don't have the expertise. We need to get an independent third party to come in and tell us what our alternatives are.
Mhm. This
Yeah,
conversation, right? This conversation a million times over has been happening over the last 4 years.
Right.
So somehow the town has to
Yeah.
get out of the mud and be
Right.
able to get all the facts and circumstances, pros and cons, all get the, not the myths, gets the realities, get the costs, here's plan A, here's plan B.
Yeah.
It all has to get on a piece
Yeah.
of paper, on a report, and then the elected officials can make a decision. Without that, we're just going to have this conversation 2 years later.
Yeah, it's opinion
Right.
over and over. And,
Right.
and let's not forget too, one of the reasons why the old high school is still in use is because of the administration.
Yeah.
The school district administration is housed in that building. So, there has to be accommodation for that somewhere as well. Now there's a very good idea afoot to move the district administration to the building that's on the old campsite, which is an option that seems to have a lot of merit to it. But again, that's not for free. That would require some work. So you're right. There's lots of different possibilities. There's loads of different opinions and some very, strong opinions, whether for sentimental reasons or other. So I agree, Karen. I think the only way that we will be able to really effectively move forward on this is, as you say, to have a third party come in, do an exhaustive, thorough investigation and lay out the facts.
Yeah. So let me ask Hugh and Gary. So if not spending more money to do a feasibility study, what's your next step and how are we going to get out of the mud and make a decision?
Oh, no,
What do we do?
my recommendation is we have the study. That's, I
Okay.
mean, I'm not saying that I would vote no against a study. I'm
Okay.
just saying that we should have done this as soon as that school was,
Yeah.
as soon as the school was built. That school should have been vacated, and look, we were in different times. Maybe we would have gotten more money for that school. And we could have found an administration wing. We could have made a wing or did something. We had that campsite there with a house in the front. But I think we've waited too long, and now we're dumping too much money in that building. I mean, we had scenarios where they were going to rent out the gym. I mean, how much are we going to make on a rental on a gym? $500? I mean, that's not going to even cover anything. So I get it. I'm all for this study, and I hope they come back and say, listen, they optimize the revenue on these properties, because that's really what they need to do and limit the expense. They've got to limit the expense on these properties. But us to keep throwing money after money, I don't know.
No, I agree with you there, Gary.
Karen, Al has his hand up.
Hugh, did you want to have any comment on that before no?
I said my
Okay.
piece. I
Okay.
think
All right,
it's-
perfect. Ellie's, thank
Yeah,
you, Hugh. Ellie's.
I just wanted to say a quick thing that one of the things about the buildings that I really believe that we need to have a study, but I have been through, like everybody else, a number of studies where you hire a consultant, you do this, that, and the other, and a lot of stuff gets just collecting dust on a shelf. The whole notion of all of the buildings in this town we need to get out of the mud, as Karen would say, on the emotion of a building. And also, to the way that I see it, the high school is the shiny new object. Everybody wants to go to the shiny new object, and that may be the best alternative. But in an RFP for the the consultant, let's deal with some reality here. One of the things that I've read, and I could be wrong, just because it's on the internet, it doesn't mean it's true, as we all know, is we look at these buildings and put a historic restriction on the building. Well, you want to just knock the value of a building out to zero, put a historic restriction on a building, whether it is the town hall, the Earl School, the Council on Aging, whatever it might be. It has to have a structure that makes sense, and not just a wish list for a variety of different organizations that want to occupy one building or another to and say we can do this with that and we can do this with that, and it just becomes a wish list and a financial sinkhole. So that's my only comment is to make sure that the RFP for a consultant, which I wouldn't disagree with. I do think that it's important to have a moderator, a consultant, or whatever, have very tight parameters as to how to evaluate what we do or we don't do. And I'll leave it with this. When you look at the Earl School, when you look at the Reed Road School, when you look at the Town Hall, these buildings are 80 to 100 years old. I mean, let's leave it at that. It's the core of the high school, the old high school, was in 1953, 2 or 3, a year before I was born. Yeah, they put on the wings later on, but the core of it is again, we're talking 70, 75 years old. These buildings have a life cycle. And maybe the best damn thing is to get rid of them all and build one brand new one. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not smart enough to know that, but this is what we need to investigate. And I don't think that the town, we meaning the town, can make these decisions in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I think it needs to be a thoughtful conversation, but it needs to have a deadline. People need to know what we're going to do, how we're going to dispose of things, how we're going to get things maybe on the tax revenue stream, how we're going to stop the bleeding of the operating expenses. And so I'm just saying, I think a study is important, but it needs to be focused. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Al. Hugh, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think Alan made a point I should have made more precisely. The core of any evaluation, he says focus. I don't disagree with that. Neutral, because everything's been floating around, and he also made a very good point. There are lots of people with agendas as to which they want to have happen, which is not neutral. They have their own ideas, and they don't care about other aspects. There was one so-called study, which is utterly useless, several years ago, which dealt with the physical dimensions of the property and what could be done with it, with no question about financial cost, realization, or whatever. Utterly useless. But an evaluation in a clearly neutral, focused event, that I wouldn't object to. But I think evaluating of the high school, that is, what do we do with it? Evaluating everything in town, I think just adds cost to really not accomplishing anything than something that goes on a shelf.
Thanks, Hugh. Betty Slade, do you have your hand up?
Yes.
Hi, Betty.
Hi. So there has been committee after committee working on this for years. There's been meeting after meeting. The same discussion has been over and over and over again. And when they said they were going to put this on the warrant, I was at the selectmen's meeting and I said, how are you going to control discussion? And what is it you're really offering us? What is it that you're really saying you're going to do? I'm not clear. I don't know if the 200,000 will do it, but I don't know what it is they're going to do. And I felt at the time that we needed a more specific statement of what would be done, the kind of people who would do it. So I don't know how you all feel about it, but I'm afraid this will go on and on and on if there isn't some control and some specific question. Are we just voting on the 200,000? We're just voting on that. And how do you put that into a package that people will vote just for that?
Well, that's what the article, that's what the article is for.
I know, but the discussion afterwards, I mean, you're going to have so many people, and it's going to be angry discussion. And I don't know if you, I think that maybe Steve can handle it, but it's going to be all over the place. And I asked the people, one of the chairmen, Brian Valcourt, when he was the last chair of the committee, I was saying, will you present data? I mean, what were the results of the RFI? Who came in and said they wanted to use it? For what purpose? What is the market value of that building? The 200,000, I just don't know if it'll cover the kinds of things that have to be decided. Although I think maybe it's the only thing to do. I thought that we should do a survey first and see what people's feelings were, because feelings are important now. And there are people out there who feel so strongly about this. And so that's what, do you want to keep the property because it's a valuable property? Not because it's the old school, but it has some things on it which are valuable. All of that needs to be looked at. I hope it can be done with 200,000 and the town meeting agrees.
Thank you, Betty. Yeah, it'll definitely be a challenge for the town moderator, but that's why he gets paid those big bucks for
Right.
what he does, right? Right. Go ahead, Lawrence. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate really what Betty and Al and Hugh have just said. I don't know, I'm struggling with this one too. You know, if we're simply voting on whether to appropriate funds to the tune of 200,000 to conduct this survey, I feel like it's too shallow and too broad. Unless they're, you know, and I've been present at some of these meetings too, where, oh, let's just ask the town what they want us to do with the old building. Well, I don't think that's good enough, frankly. I don't think that's what you get paid for, to be in a leadership position, to just, you know, abdicate any sort of leadership to, well, let's just ask the people what they want to do. You know, absent of any real information or any real proposals or any real feasibilities, I just feel like, you know, we're just kicking that can further down the road, and we're spending money to kick it further down the road. So I agree with Betty. I think, you know, unless there's a real, you know, a well-defined set of parameters about, you know, what that survey or what that study is going to look at and what it's going to produce, you know, I'd rather not spend the money until those questions are answered. I mean, it reminds me of the conversation we were having about the municipal light plant. You know, it's the same sort of thing. What does it mean? What is it going to actually entail? Who's going to be on the hook for what?
Well, this is kind of a chicken and an egg thing. I mean, I don't think that they want to draft an RFP unless they know they have the money to be able to go out and solicit for the RFP. And
yeah, but there should be a plan about what that RFP will include.
I just read it to you. They have scoped out what they want to include in the RFP to evaluate the annex, the town hall, council on aging buildings, compare the costs of rehabbing existing buildings to cost of rehabbing and moving into the old high school. Evaluate the cost of moving into the old high school as compared to tearing the school down and the cost of building a new municipal complex. This is at a minimum. This was not all inclusive, but these were the things at minimum. I mean, I think they do have a plan. When I say the select board has a plan to be able to narrow the scope down enough that they want to get the answers. I mean, the select board is just as frustrated as anything, because I think that they were counting on the long-term building committee to come up with a plan. Well, Lawrence, you and I both know, as members of that committee, it's kind of willy-nilly as far as, you know, we don't have the resources to come up with a plan that you can point to that has good facts behind it.
Yeah,
you know, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of, well, I think this, and maybe it would cost that, and code, and da, 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 da. So we all had a lot of ideas, but nothing that we could really say and point to This is an independent appraisal of where, you know, where the money, you know, how the money is going to be spent or how it could be spent. So, you know, it's a lot of money, but I think it's the only way that this thing is going to finally come to, they'll have a packet in hand, and hopefully the select board can vote on it. The town meeting gave the select board the absolute authority to dispose of that property however they see fit. So it doesn't even require additional town meeting approval as to what's done with the building, because they've already given that to the select board. And the select board is sitting there going, we need more information. The long-term building committee failed in its efforts to provide them with any additional information.
Yeah.
So they need professional information and professional facts to be able to guide that decision that they've been authorized to make. So I just think it's important that this part get done. And then that way we can stop spending money that's just for a property that's just sitting there.
Thanks. And do you think that this article scopes that out?
I would like
clearly
to
enough?
think that the select board will forward the RFP to the long-term building committee for its review before they send it out. And, you know, certainly there are enough people there that have a background in various, you know, trades or ideas that they would consider different things that should be included in that. So, you know, if it did pass, I would certainly make it well known to the town administrator that people should be involved in the crafting of the RFP.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know what they'll do, but that's what I would think.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. And just to, you know, I'm reading the article, and Steve is very clear on town meeting where the comments need to address what the question is of the article, right? So the article is saying, will the town raise or appropriate funds not to exceed $200,000 to do a feasibility study? I don't know that if people start talking about what they want to do, that's something that he will allow, because that's not answering the question of what the warrant article is. So the question is, do we want to spend the money? And that's, you know, that's where I'm assuming the moderator will keep the conversation directed. But everybody's got 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. Al has his hand up.
Al, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to weigh in about how the chess pieces of this whole puzzle work together. So the planning board sent out a questionnaire to people in Central Village, for example, regarding whether or not sidewalks were feasible, whether they wanted them, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's kind of a revisit from 12 years ago, but we won't go into that. What I do want to say, though, is that the Serped came up with a study in either 2021 or 2022 talking about having a sidewalk going and spending money to go from a corner of Lee's Market across the town hall, across Candace's old piece, I don't remember, up to the annex. Now, here's my point. We have that on the table, but if those two buildings are decided that they no longer serve a purpose, and we're going to move everything to the old school, I mean the old high school, why would we spend the money? I mean, it just seems it's like the sidewalk to nowhere. And I'm not beating up the sidewalks here. What I'm talking about is that there's a coordinated effort. I mean, this stuff needs to be figured out. Otherwise, let's build a sidewalk next year, and then 2 years from now, we're going to abandon those buildings and move them somewhere else. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. So this is why I think a formulated three-dimensional study of all the moving pieces need to be coordinated and figured out for the best fiscal stability of this town and the long-term benefit of this town. So that's all. I just wanted to toss that in.
Thank you, Al. does anyone have anything else? Do we want a motion on this or article? Are we ready?
Make a motion to approve, article number, whatever number it is, article 26.
26. Is there a
That's a-
second?
Yep.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion or are we ready? I think we're ready. Yep, no other discussion. Okay, Buzzy,
Aye.
Hugh,
Nay.
Gary has left. He just texted me, so he had to
Alright.
go. Cindy,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
and Karen, I. Thank you. Okay, our last article of the evening is
Two, no, we have two.
We got two?
Yep.
Oh.
Article 28,
Oh,
28
okay.
and 33.
Okay, thank you. That was the typo one.
Yeah, so
Okay.
28 is regarding payment in lieu of tax payments, pilot payments on the solar farms. As to why, why is this question there now? How are they currently taxed? The reply that was given, the laws changed in the spring of 2021, requiring authorization from town meeting to negotiate solar pilot agreements. Previous agreements were negotiated prior to the change in regulations. So this is evidently to button things up based on the prior regulation.
I move to recommend.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? No? Okay, I will do a roll call again. Buzzy,
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
and Karen, I. Thank you. And then Cindy, you said one more was Article
Article 33,
33.
the lawyer in the room, one of the lawyers in the room, felt that Article 33, that he would rather have a less than symbol in front of the 20 hours. It was responded to me rather than a minus sign. The response that I had received was that the minus sign is currently used throughout the personnel bylaws and just looking to be consistent. I would add to that there's a pretty good bet that the personnel bylaws in total will be reviewed and revised to some degree if the financing does come through for the compensation study at minimum. But those bylaws have really been pounded to death in so many different ways that I, as chairman of the personnel board, will certainly take that into consideration. But Buzzy, in removing the minus sign and including the less than sign throughout the whole document. But for purposes of this article, they wanted to keep it consistent. But I will certainly take that into consideration the future. I think it's a good suggestion. And we can apply that globally in the bylaws in the future.
I would accept that promise, even if it weren't being video recorded.
Okay.
I rely on Cindy as well.
All right, so I guess I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
thank you. Roll call, Buzzy,
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
Gary. Oh, Gary's gone.
Yeah.
Sorry. Cindy,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
and Karen, I. Thank you. Okay, is that it for warrant articles? Cindy, I think we got them all.
I think that's, yes, I think that's it. We can turn these around to the select board tomorrow. They need to go to printer Thursday. So we would still have some time on Wednesday, on our Wednesday meeting, if there were any things to change, or if we wanted to readdress the municipal light plant article prior to that, if if Buzzy and I are able to come up with some good information prior to that, but he's gonna have it posted on the 18th, which is Tuesday.
Right.
So, they really have to go to the printer by Thursday.
Okay. Okay, and so on that point, so and we can talk about this, but I don't see anything else on our Wednesday agenda other than if, one
Betty,
second,
Betty has her hand up.
Yeah, 1 second, Betty. So at this point, there's nothing else on our agenda for Wednesday. So, could consider setting a timeline and then canceling the meeting if we needed to. It's already posted, so, but go ahead, Betty. Did you have something to add?
Yes, my question is, if tomorrow night the Diamond debt exclusion fails, how is that going to impact the FY24 budget and your override budget? Will it affect them at all? Will you talk about that after it fails? If it fails?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So in terms of the fiscal 24 budget, so there's already a dollar amount in there for the potential impact that it would have on fiscal 24. So if the Diamond vote passed, meaning it would be debt exclusion, then that would actually be a savings in the regular fiscal 24 budget. So the fiscal 24 budget under Article 5 would be covered. It would be a little favorable if it passed. If the Diamond was not successful, it wouldn't impact fiscal 24. So the Article 6, which is the budget appropriation for the supplemental budget, if Prop 2.5 were to pass, again, won't impact fiscal 24. So that article wouldn't change either. The big impact to Diamond would come in fiscal 25 and beyond, but potentially, Betty, that might impact, instead of it being a $3 million override, that might make that scenario of a discussion happen. But
Yes,
it wouldn't be for fiscal 24.
Also, you could make a non-debt exclusion borrowing. That's out there being discussed too.
Mhm.
In a very negative way, I must say, but all of that is being discussed on Facebook.
What are they discussing?
They're discussing that if we don't do a debt exclusion, there's no tax increase.
Mhm.
Oh,
And that's now getting big by certain people really out there
right.
talking. And so then they say, well, you would have to borrow it. You borrowed for the campgrounds, so therefore you can borrow for this. So it may not impact services. So when you're arguing for an override,
Mhm.
on the basis of we're trying to maintain services in town, we have to be really clear and honest. And I'm beginning to have some troubles. So I think it's extremely important what happens, and that if it is it fails, then it would be good to have a finance committee meeting and a board of selectmen meeting and a school committee meeting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. Right. Absolutely. If, it has to get paid for one way or the other, whether it gets added to your tax bill or it comes out of your budget, you're still paying for it in one way or another. It's just a different mechanism, right? We all know that, but, yeah, I mean, in terms of the two articles that we voted on tonight, Article 5, which is the fiscal 24 budget, and then Article 6, which is the budget appropriation for Prop 2.5 for to pass. That, as far as I understand it, and you guys can think about this too, I don't believe in either case whether it's a yes or no is going to impact either of those articles for us, because they're fiscal 24 only that we're talking about.
Well, I think that Susan just said that the campground was a non-debt excluded, and it does impact services. I guess it's the question of how much.
Well, it's only $100,000 a year, far different than the Diamond. I mean, it was $100,000 a year for roughly 10 years. I mean, it's not $600,000 a year for 30 years.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
far different
right.
impact.
Right. And, the numbers, at the time, I think Diamond, had estimated 450,000 a year but that's, before interest rates and construction costs have gone up. And so, that number would need to be freshened. I wouldn't even want to make a quote on here, but I can pretty well say it'd be more than 450,000, but even 450,000, trying to squeeze that into our current operating budget is disastrous. I mean, it would clearly be detrimental to the town. So there would have to be other cuts to be able to pay for that of pretty substantive to bring in another 450,000 of expenses in there. Go ahead.
While I'm thinking of it, next year when we go through the budget issues, we should invite our local voted representative to Diamond to the finance committee to present the Diamond story to us as far as financial impact. I bring this up only because I had a conversation with Tom Aubin at candidates night, and he kind of indicated to me how different things were when he was an administrator and superintendent at Diamond, that money was never the big issue. That if they needed something, they go for it and they make the assessments. So I don't know how much restraint Diamond uses when they approach their budget year. I really don't. We don't have good representation from their board to our board. I know when Tracy was on the board, she would follow it, but we don't have good representation that follows what the what Diamond is doing financially. And I think that we should invite the local representative that's voted by the voters here in town that represents Diamond to come in and talk to us about the financial situation at Diamond. They send us an assessment every year and we never question it. We just pay it. We have no idea what that includes.
Well, we don't have any choice except to pay it, but you're right.
I know, but we should at least get an explanation. So I would just add that we should invite that person in next year when we do our budgets.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next meeting, so Wednesday is up in the air. I have one, I had forwarded to everyone a draft of the fiscal 24 budget memo. I sent that off to everyone last week, and I had asked in the email if anybody had any comments, you could send them to me individually, and I'd be happy to have incorporated them into the next draft. I didn't hear from anybody. So I don't know if everyone has had a chance to review that, if people have any comments or anything in regards to that. Has everyone had a chance to review it? Because this is, coming from the finance committee. It's not coming just from me. So I want to make sure all our voices are heard and in agreement. The one thing that I'm working on now, it's in its final draft. I'm going to modify a couple of things relative to the state aid section. So I'm going to, in there was a current chart that had all the state aid in the, thank you, Zach, no comments, appreciate that. In the state aid, there was a chart that had state aid in the aggregate. So I'm actually going to break it out into two charts to show Chapter 70 as one set of revenue, and then the rest of the state aid is a different one, since Chapter 70 is tied to enrollment. So this way it doesn't confuse the fact that state aid is still not accelerating at the level that would be hoped or appreciated by Westport. But I'm going to rework that a little bit. And so I don't know if anybody has any other comments on that. So what we can do is, if we have our scheduled meeting next Tuesday, I will try to get you a final draft, and then we can all approve it next Tuesday and get it out. Go ahead, Betty. You have I see you waving.
Just two things. One is, I hope you'll post that on the town website.
I will, once it's finalized in this finance
The last
committee.
one is 3/6, dated 3/6. And the second is a request.
Sure.
as you know, we are trying to talk to people about the override. And as you know, it's really difficult. And one of the questions that comes up over and over and over again, not a question, but more a statement, is the way in which these debt exclusions are worded. And I know that it's a legalese thing. However, I really think it'd be helpful if we could explain why that is the case, and does it mean that there's one particular person who says, for example, the whole 293 million may have to be paid by us. Is there some kind of statement that we could have to answer the question, the legalese question, and why? I think it's something to do with interest payments, but and how can we explain that we are not on the hook for $293 million for Diamond? How do we do that? Any suggestions?
Well, that's, I think, definitely a select board question, but you mean on the ballot itself?
Well, yeah, you could, a handout. Can there be such a thing as a handout?
I think so, because our state ballot, we get a little pamphlet in the mail that's a supplement, so they don't put that on the ballot, but that can be provided. So
a handout.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you get it too. When there's the state ballot, we get, an independent two sides, here's the pro, here's the for, here's the not. But yeah,
they just can't put any explanation on the ballot. So when you go into that ballot box, it is what it is. They can't offer any additional information.
Do you think that's a Board of Selectmen?
No.
I'm not thinking of that, Cindy. What Karen talked about. Would there be? Can there be handouts? Do you think it should be done by the Board of Selectmen rather than?
Yeah, that's a question for them. I think is there, and again, there's a couple of lawyers in the room that can help. But my understanding is, since they're elected officials, that they can voice an opinion on an election. But I don't know if that means
not an opinion. I'm asking for a statement, an accurate statement about what it is.
Actual statement for it. That's a question for, it's not, I don't know how to answer that, but it's definitely not. I mean, the Finance Committee doesn't even make recommendations on ballot questions. So that's not, that's not something that we even do.
Sue just said something cannot be handed out at the polls.
Yeah, you can't hand anything out at the polling stations. You can't campaign or anything like that at the actual polling stations. But I think it sounds like within like 50 yards or whatever it is. But I think what you're talking about, Betty, and what Karen mentioned, which is we get that thing from the Secretary of State or the Electoral Commissioner or whatever his actual title is. It's like the information for voters that tells you what things are on the ballot, and then you get a pro and a con statement for each.
Yes.
So something like that. That would be incredibly useful for these.
It's not going to be done for tomorrow, that's for sure.
Well, no. It's too late to do anything about tomorrow now, but that's a very good question, isn't it, for what we can do locally?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Betty. So did anyone have any other comments or on the memo? It's mostly a repeat from the last fiscal year, updating it for, for all the numbers for this year, but substantially very similar. So I'll do one final draft and then get it out. And then if we could get that approved, or edits, if you have changes to it, we can get it all taken care of next week, or, and then that can get published. And so that can get on the town's website, and it gives 2 weeks, 2+ weeks for town meeting to people have some information.
There's one more thing is about the 20th of April. There's going to be a discussion of the override. And I'm not exactly sure the time. It'll be at the new school, probably around 7. We'll let you know. I'm hoping to get a moderator to be there, but I'm hoping that you all can attend, or some of you can attend, at least be there to discuss the override. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So April 20th, Thursday, April 20th. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we can move to approve the minutes, and then we can take the next step and move to adjourn, right?
I move acceptance of the minutes.
What are the dates? Thank you, Buzzy. I know I think we had last Tuesday. I don't have the agenda up in front of me. So we have 4/4, and then we had the week before. So we had March 28th. Maybe our, Jess, can you confirm that? Is it March 28th?
Yes, 3/28 and 4/4.
Thank you. See, she's behind the scenes, but she's with it.
She's listening.
She's super helpful. Thank you. Any motion for March 28th, 2023 minutes, please, to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Thank you. Buzzy?
Aye.
Hugh?
aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Karen, thank you. And then the next minutes were the date,
April 4.
April 4. I'd like a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Aye.
Second,
Buzzy?
Aye.
Hugh?
aye.
Gary? Oh, Gary's gone. Cindy?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Karen, thank you. So just before we close it out, so we tentatively have a meeting for Wednesday. At what point do we want to confirm when that we cancel? Do we want to set a time, or do we want to just cancel it for now, or what do we want to do?
Well, I guess a lot depends on what Buzzy and I are able to find out on Tuesday.
Okay.
So why don't you give us until noontime Wednesday?
Okay. All right. That sounds perfect.
One of the things, while Jess is still with us, Jess, will you send me the votes from today? Can you send those to me tomorrow so I can forward them to the select board so they can incorporate them into the warrant? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Great. And then our next meeting will be April 18th, which hopefully will be our last meeting before town meeting. And then it should be. And then that will just be, again, the fiscal memo wrap up and call it a day, hopefully. Okay, so nothing else.
Don't forget to vote tomorrow. Go out and vote tomorrow.
We're not live here, so no one's going to hear that.
That's right.
But go vote.
Go vote.
Go
I'm telling
vote.
the people that are on this call to go and vote.
Go vote.
No,
All
I
right.
think I'm gonna miss.
All right, motion to adjourn if we could.
So moved.
Second.
Super. Buzzy.
Aye.
Hugh.
Aye.
Cindy.
Aye.
Lawrence.
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
And Karen, I. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. We got through a lot tonight.